Oldschool Runescape is a game that is constantly evolving. Every week we get new updates with things added, but occasionally, every once in a while, something is removed. So today I actually wanted to look at what training methods were deemed so strong that Jagex actually stripped them from the game. Now there's been some discussion in the Oldschool Runescape community recently about a new mining training method, the AFK Duke Mining method. This method was kind of added accidentally with the addition of Duke Celiaces from Desert Treasure 2. Before you can start the boss fight, you actually have to mine the Salak salt to make a potion to wake up the Duke. But what's unique about this rock is the item is stackable, and players were able to find a way to AFK here for 6 hours straight without having to interact with their client. It worked because players could put a weight on their spacebar or left or right key, and this would allow you to mine for 6 hours straight. Now the experience was very bad, you're only getting about 10 or 11k mining experience per hour, but just today, literally 5 or 6 hours ago, Jagex has removed this as a training method and made it so after 5 minutes your arms will get tired and you'll just stop mining altogether. Now certainly not one of the most overpowered methods on this list, but Jagex removed it nonetheless. Back to Guardians of the Rift, I suppose. Now one training method that was removed from Old School that kind of went under the radar, I didn't even know about it until I was reading through an old blog, was the Cure Me magic training method. I'm not sure how long this was in the game for, but they removed it recently and that was the first time I actually heard of it. Now this magic training method uses the Lunar Spellbook and abused the fact that the Cure Me spell could be cast literally as quickly as you could click it, theoretically. Cure Me can only be activated though when you are venomed or poisoned, so that was the natural barrier stopping you from casting this non-stop. But some crafty players were actually able to find a way to constantly re-venom themselves, and were able to cast the Cure Me spell at an incredibly rapid rate and were able to gain over 1 million experience per hour in magic, while also being much more cost effective than the next best magic training method, which is bolt enchanting. So it was an incredibly strong method, but Jagex did actually nerf the method back in May that will now allow you to only cast the spell once per tick, which theoretically would still allow you to get up to 400k per hour magic experience, but with the limited amount of creatures that can venom you in this game, I'm not actually sure how they did it. There's only a handful of creatures that can inflict venom, and I guess also PvP, so one of these 6 creatures they were able to abuse. But either way, the method was deemed too overpowered and was heavily nerfed. Now a really obscure training method that was actually really popular back at the release of Oldschool Runescape was Toy Mice Agility Training. Now if you're familiar with my channel, this is something that I've actually done in recent times even. But no one in their right mind would ever consider actually using this as a training method unless you physically had to, as it only gives about 2 to 4k per hour agility experience, which is terrible even for a slow skill like agility. But back closer to the release of Oldschool Runescape, Toy Mice gave a significant amount more experience, and this actually led to a really strong training method that could be done right from level 1 that could get you 50 to 60k per hour agility experience, which is really good considering that's kind of competing with a level 70 agility course today. Now previous to this nerf, not only did you get experience when you successfully picked it up, but you got one when you failed as well, which actually made the method better at lower levels because failing to pick it up just means you could click on it again, you don't have to drop it on the ground, wind it up, etc. But in March of 2013, a week and a half after the release of Oldschool Runescape, they nerfed this method, never to be seen again. Now jumping from the beginning of Old School to just a couple months ago, a method that was in the game for a long time that was incredibly strong across multiple different skills was the Zbak combat training method. This method existed in the game for almost a year and was very well known. It even at one point was added to the wiki as the best ranged training method. Now this method really just boils down to a mechanic that you can exploit specifically on high hit point monsters. Now one mechanic that existed in the game for a long time is that high hit point monsters would give you a higher XP multiplier, which means not only did they have a giant health pool to go through that would allow you to get good XP rates, but the actual multiplier was higher than any other monster, which means monsters like Zbak, Verzik, Nex, or anything with a high hit point pool give ridiculous experience rates. Zbak was the most effective for a couple reasons. The Tombs of Amascut can offer you unlimited deaths, which means All you had to do was scale up the raid with a bunch of players, get to the Zbak room, which means you could constantly attack Zbak with things like a Zarite crossbow and spec transfer, and at any point you could always just die to reset the room and get your stats back. Players were able to get over 1,000,000 experience per hour in ranged, but also combat stats as well by taking advantage of multiple spec transfer alts. And if you had access to a very organized group of players, the XP rate you could get was astronomical for melee combats as well. Jagex deemed this method game breaking and potentially affecting the integrity of the game, and heavily nerfed it this May. To do this, they introduced a hard cap on how much XP scales with hit points, which affected Zbak but also any other monster with high hit points as well, which makes this method not nearly as potent anymore. Now back in 2016, an incredibly strong magic training method was discovered. Some players figured out that if you had a couple of alt accounts and some rock cakes, you could get up to 6 or 7 million magic experience per hour, essentially allowing you to max out the entire skill in just an hour or two. Now this worked by using the Heal Other spell. Now essentially by rock caking on one account and casting Heal Other on your main, you would transfer hit points over, and this could be cast in rapid succession, gaining you just a ridiculous amount of magic experience every single second, and up to 6 or 7 million per hour at the high end. Now of course you would need a pretty high magic level to do this. The spell requires 92 magic, but this would allow you to get 92 to 99 in about an hour, and Jagex deemed it an unintended mechanic and training method and stripped it from the game pretty quickly after someone published this YouTube video. Now probably the most infamous example of a training method getting removed from old school has to be the AFK Guthan's training method. Back in 2015, players were able to stay logged in for 6 hours while having their character auto-retaliate with the Guthan's armor set on. Players discovered that you could set up Nightmare Zone in a way that allowed you to heal enough health back from the Guthan's armor set that you would never die. You would just keep auto-retaliate on, and you could stay there for 6 hours at a time. So all you had to do was gear up with the Guthan set, leave yourself logged in overnight, and you would gain 300, 400,000 experience overnight. This is how a lot of players maxed their combat stats back in the day, and it was a very controversial topic, and it took a while for Jagex to actually remove it, as so many people love doing it. In a similar vein, players are able to AFK splash for 6 hours at a time as well, and there's other ways players are able to abuse this logout timer as well, but by far the most popular was of course Guthan's. Finally, in September of 2015, Jagex eventually fixed the 6-hour log timer and made it so after 20 minutes of no interaction with the client, your character would stop attacking, thus kind of deleting this method. Now the final method I don't think many people actually know about is something that I somehow stumbled upon, although I was not the first, and then it was very quickly removed. Now this is actually a training method that involved Hespori, a very niche method that only really was viable or affected a small community of players. Now to kill Hespori, you first have to destroy the 4 flowers that surround her. And something that's really interesting when the boss was released is these flowers would get one shot every single time. They actually still work that way, but what was different is they would actually award you the full experience for killing them, regardless of your max hit, regardless of your accuracy, regardless of your account level. You would get 40 experience in whatever combat stat you attacked it with. It could be ranged or it could be melee. You get a 40 XP drop every single time, and you could kill 4 of them, so 160 XP per rotation. Not that great, except for the fact that you can leave the arena and rejoin instantly, and the flowers will respawn. So from even level 1 in the stat, you could gain pretty decent ranged or melee training. From what I recall, it was only around 30 or 40k per hour, like it wasn't that good, and you had to have this very specific account that had 65 farming and 1 ranged, or 1 defense or 1 attack. But I don't even think there was ever any news published about this, but they removed it just a few months later. So with the recent removal and discussion around the Duke Mining method, I thought it was interesting to look back at other methods that were removed in the past and to kind of compare the impact that they had, and I think we can realize that some of these were much bigger of an issue than others. But that's all I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Now before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to Alejandra, Mitch Reinders, The Hybrid, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier. You guys are awesome. I do really appreciate it. Also, thank you to Kaspersky, YoYoSub89, and NDM0001 for being subscribed at the Runite tier. Thanks everyone again, and I'll see you next time.